Did you know that Jewish tribes once ruled parts of Arabia? Their history is almost forgotten, but they were powerful traders, warriors, and leaders. They built strong communities, controlled key trade routes, and even had a Jewish kingdom in Yemen. But something happened, something that changed their fate forever. Why did they disappear? Where did they go? Stay with us, because this lost chapter of history will leave you shocked. Imagine standing in the vast deserts of Arabia, where the wind carries whispers of a past long buried. Centuries before Islam, before the rise of the great Arab empires, another story was unfolding, one that few speak of today. Scattered across oasis towns and bustling trade routes, powerful Jewish tribes thrived in the heart of Arabia. They weren't just travelers or merchants, they were rulers, warriors, and scholars. Their presence shaped the land. Their influence spread far and wide. But why don't we hear about them? Why has history hidden their existence? For centuries, these tribes played a vital role in Arabian politics, forming alliances, building fortresses, and mastering the art of trade. In places like Yathrib, now Medina, Khaybar, and Taima, they built strongholds, controlled wealth, and even influenced local cultures. Some ruled entire cities, while others held sway over vast trade networks, connecting Arabia to the rest of the ancient world. They lived with honor, fought with courage, and left behind stories that should have echoed through time. Yet today, their names are barely spoken. Their legacy is a whisper in history books, a footnote in ancient texts. Something happened. Something that changed everything. How did these powerful tribes vanish from the land they once ruled? Was it war? Betrayal? A slow erosion of their identity? Or did they simply disappear into the fabric of history, blending into new lands, forgotten even by their own descendants? This is not just a story of the past. It's a mystery waiting to be unraveled. Because if these tribes were once so powerful, if they held influence for centuries, then why was their history erased? Stay with us, because what we're about to reveal will change everything you thought you knew. History often hides its most astonishing truths in the sands of time. We just uncovered the mystery of Arabia's forgotten Jewish tribes, how they once ruled cities, commanded wealth, and shaped history. But the real question is, where did they come from? Their story begins far from the deserts of Arabia, in a land that has echoed through the ages, Israel. Thousands of years ago, waves of Jewish migration flowed from the heart of ancient Israel to the vast, untamed lands of Arabia. But why did they leave? What pushed them to venture so far from their homeland? Some came as exiles, victims of war and conquest. When the Babylonian Empire crushed Jerusalem in 586 BCE, thousands of Israelites were taken captive. But not all were willing to surrender to fate. Some chose a different path. They traveled south, across the harsh deserts, in search of a new beginning. Arabia, with its growing trade routes and independent cities, became their refuge. They weren't just wanderers. They were survivors, determined to rebuild what was lost. Others came as merchants. The lands of Arabia were the crossroads of the ancient world. Spices from India, silk from China, gold from Africa. All passed through these trade routes. Jewish traders saw an opportunity. They weren't just skilled in commerce, they were experts in diplomacy, law, and finance. By settling in key cities like Yathrib, now Medina, Khaybar, and Taima, they established powerful communities, controlling trade and securing influence. But they didn't just blend into Arabian society. They left their mark. They built synagogues, practiced their faith, and preserved their traditions. Over time, these settlements grew into thriving Jewish strongholds, respected and sometimes feared by their Arab neighbors. Some even rose to power, ruling territories and forming alliances with local tribes. And yet, despite their strength, their fate remained uncertain. How did a people so deeply rooted in Arabia vanish from its history? What forces led to their decline? The answer lies in the centuries that followed. A tale of war, betrayal, and shifting powers. Stay with us, because the truth is even more shocking than you think. The Jewish tribes of Arabia were not just survivors, they were builders of empires. From their humble beginnings as exiles and traders, they rose to power, shaping the very fabric of Arabian society. But how did they go from refugees to rulers? The answer lies in their mastery of trade, alliances, and strategy. Imagine the Arabian Peninsula in ancient times, a vast desert where survival depended on more than just strength. Water was gold, and trade was power. The Jewish tribes understood this better than anyone. They settled in key locations: Khaybar, Yathrib, Medina, and Tamah, places rich in resources and positioned along major trade routes. Here, they didn't just live, they thrived. Through trade, they gained immense wealth. Caravans carrying spices, silk, and gold passed through Jewish settlements, and with each transaction, their influence grew. They weren't just traders, they were financiers. They lent money, managed markets, and ensured that no deal was made without their knowledge. Soon, they controlled not just goods, but entire economies. But wealth alone wasn't enough to secure their place in Arabia. They needed allies, and so, they built strong relationships with powerful Arab tribes. Some they befriended through trade, others through strategic marriages. Over time, these alliances turned into real political power. Jewish leaders became trusted advisors to Arab chiefs. Their settlements became fortresses, defended by warriors trained for battle. Yet, power always comes with enemies. Not everyone welcomed their rise. Some Arab tribes saw them as a threat, rivals in the struggle for control. Tensions simmered beneath the surface, and conflicts began to emerge. But for centuries, the Jewish tribes held their ground, standing as unshakable forces in Arabian history. So what changed? What led to their downfall? The answer lies in the shifting tides of history. Wars, betrayals, and a rising force that would reshape Arabia forever. Stay with us, because what happens next will shock you. Power is never permanent. It rises like the sun, burning bright, only to set when the tides of history shift. The Jewish tribes of Arabia had built their wealth, formed alliances, and secured influence. But some among them wanted more. Not just survival, not just influence, but a kingdom. And in the southern lands of Arabia, they achieved it. Deep in the mountains and deserts of Yemen, a kingdom rose, one unlike any other in the region. It was the Himyarite kingdom, a powerful civilization that ruled over vast territories, controlling key trade routes between Africa, India, and the Middle East. And then, something remarkable happened. In the late 4th or early 5th century, Judaism became the state religion of this kingdom. But this was no ordinary conversion. The king of Himyar, driven by a vision, embraced Judaism with a fierce passion. Some say it was a political move, to unite his people under one faith and resist the growing influence of Christianity from the Byzantine Empire and Ethiopia. Others believe it was deeper, a genuine spiritual awakening that changed the course of history. Whatever the reason, one thing is clear. Himyar was no longer just an Arabian kingdom. It had become a Jewish kingdom. And then came the king who would shake the world, Du Nuwas, a warrior, a visionary, a man whose name would be etched in blood and fire. Du Nuwas took the throne at a time when Christian forces, backed by Ethiopia and Byzantium, sought to expand their influence into Arabia. To him, this was not just politics, it was a battle of faith, a struggle for survival. He saw Christianity as a foreign power, an invading force threatening the Jewish identity of his people, and so he made a choice that would seal his fate. With fire and sword, he launched a brutal campaign against Christian strongholds in his kingdom, most famously against the city of Najran. The accounts say he gave the Christians a choice: convert to Judaism or face death. Many refused, and what followed was a massacre. Flames engulfed churches. Men and women were slaughtered, and the desert sands ran red with blood. To Du Nuas, it was a necessary war, a final stand against foreign domination. But he had underestimated the enemies he was making. The Christian kingdom of Aksum, modern-day Ethiopia, backed by the powerful Byzantine Empire, could not ignore what had happened. The Ethiopian king, Caleb, sent an army across the Red Sea. What followed was one of the most decisive invasions in Arabian history. The Himyarite kingdom, once powerful, now faced a storm it could not withstand. Du Nuas, the warrior king, fought to the bitter end. But he could not stop what was coming. The Ethiopian forces crushed Himyar. And then, in one of the most dramatic moments in history, Du Nuas, refusing to be captured, rode his horse into the sea, vanishing beneath the waves, choosing death over defeat. And just like that, the last Jewish kingdom of Arabia fell. But what happened next was even more shocking. The Jewish tribes of Arabia, who had once been warriors, rulers, and power brokers, would soon face their greatest challenge yet: the rise of a force that would change history forever. Stay with us, because the next chapter is even more unbelievable. The fall of the Himyarite kingdom was not just the end of a dynasty, it was the beginning of an erasure. The Jewish tribes of Arabia, who had once ruled, traded, and influenced the region for centuries, suddenly found themselves on the wrong side of history. Their lands were seized, their power shattered, and their very identity threatened. But they did not disappear. Scattered to the winds. The exodus of Arabia's Jews' history is often written by the victors. After the Ethiopian conquest and the eventual rise of Islam in the 7th century, the Jewish presence in Arabia began to fade. Some left willingly, sensing that the golden days of Jewish power in Arabia were over. Others were forced out, exiled from lands their ancestors had lived in for generations. But they did not vanish into thin air. Many of them fled north, back to their ancestral homeland, Israel. They sought refuge in places where Judaism still thrived, where they could continue their traditions without fear. Some integrated into the Jewish communities of Jerusalem and Galilee, bringing with them the memories of the desert, the traditions of their lost tribes. Others journeyed to Persia, modern-day Iran, where Jewish communities had long existed. Persia, at the time, was one of the great centers of Jewish learning. The Babylonian Talmud was being compiled, and scholars debated the future of Jewish law and identity. Arabian Jewish exiles found a new home here, contributing to the vast Jewish intellectual traditions that would shape Judaism for centuries to come. But one of the most surprising destinations was North Africa. Some of the exiled Jews of Arabia crossed the Red Sea, landing in Egypt. From there, they spread westward, blending into the Jewish communities of Tunisia, Morocco, and Algeria. Even today, some North African Jewish families trace their ancestry back to the Arabian Peninsula, carrying a lineage that was nearly erased from history. But this is not just a story told through ancient texts. Science has uncovered traces of this forgotten past. Genetic studies on Jewish populations have revealed links to Arabian ancestry, suggesting that the blood of Arabia's lost Jewish tribes still flows through the veins of modern Jewish communities. One of the most fascinating findings comes from Yemenite Jews. For centuries, the Jews of Yemen preserved traditions, dialects, and customs that set them apart from other Jewish groups. Historians long debated where they came from, until DNA studies confirmed what some had suspected. They were the last remnants of the Jewish presence in Arabia. Even the Sephardic and Mizrahi Jews, those who trace their origins to Spain, North Africa, and the Middle East, show traces of Arabian Jewish ancestry. Though history tried to erase them, their genes tell a different story. The Jewish tribes of Arabia may no longer exist as they once did, but their mark remains. Their fortresses in Khaybar and Tema still stand as ruins in the desert, whispering tales of a time when Jewish warriors ruled these lands. Their influence on trade, politics, and culture shaped the Arabian Peninsula in ways few acknowledge today. Was it because history favored those who came after them? Was it because they were seen as an inconvenient part of Arabia's past? Or was it simply because their legacy was too complex, too intertwined with the rise and fall of kingdoms to be easily remembered? Whatever the reason, one thing is clear. They were never truly lost. Their bloodline continues. Their traditions live on. Their story is still being uncovered, piece by piece, by those who dare to look beyond the official narratives. This is the shocking truth. The Jewish tribes of Arabia did not vanish. They became a part of the world, hidden in plain sight. History is like a great ocean, deep, vast, and filled with lost stories waiting to be rediscovered. The Jewish tribes of Arabia were once powerful rulers, traders, and warriors. They shaped the Arabian Peninsula in ways that most history books refuse to mention. But as we have seen, power is fragile. It can be taken away, rewritten, or even erased. The Jewish kingdoms of Arabia fell. Their leaders were defeated, their people exiled, and their names lost in time. But did they truly disappear? Or did they simply become part of the world in ways no one ever expected? Here's the shocking truth. They may still be among us. Think about it. Generations of Jews from Arabia were scattered to Israel, Persia, North Africa, and beyond. Some may have converted under pressure, losing their original identity over time. Others may have held onto fragments of their traditions without realizing where they came from. Could it be possible that some descendants of these lost tribes still walk among us without even knowing their true origins? Recent genetic studies hint at something incredible. Some Arab and Jewish communities share DNA markers that go back to the same ancient tribes. Could this mean that bloodlines once divided by history were never truly separated? Could the past still be alive in ways we never imagined? History has a way of hiding its greatest secrets in plain sight. The Jewish tribes of Arabia may no longer exist by name, but their influence never faded. Their stories live in the ruins of ancient fortresses, in the traditions of distant communities, and perhaps even in the people watching this very video. So what do you think? Could the lost descendants of Arabia's Jewish tribes still exist today without even knowing their true origins? Could history be waiting for us to uncover a truth that was buried long ago? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you found this story fascinating, make sure to subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and stay with us for more untold stories of history. Because sometimes the greatest truths are the ones we were never told.